Hey guys, this is Pedro back with another interview covering VCT Americas Stage 2 playoffs. For this occasion, I have here with me another broadcast on it. This time it's Bren. You already know him. I don't need to say anything more about him. That said, Bren, thank you so much for making this happen, despite all of the the obstacles we had to go through along the way. But we're still here. We're still good. We're still vibing. Just want to ask you the usual introductory question. How are you doing? How are you taking in this entire situation? How are you taking in the vibes?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. I mean, the year overall has been rough just because of how condensed it is. Like in terms of the format, I mean, we've been like speaking to death about it. I feel like the early portion of the year, every Platchat episode, we would just be talking about the format and how kind of rough it was going to be, and it definitely has played out like that. I mean, me and Josh, we didn't even end up going to Shanghai to work it, but I mean, at least me personally, I'm still feeling the burnout, like the verge of it almost. So, but I've just been trying to, it's like you're walking a tightrope, it's a balancing act between just not going all the way in terms of just preparation and going as hard as I usually do, and just trying to manage that with making it through the whole year. And it's just been made a bit more difficult because there's not really as many adequate breaks at all. But yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm finding the middle ground, at least I think I am.
Do you feel this year is much more difficult compared to last year? Because last year's kind of like the same kind of deal, having the season so pumped up together within the space of like a 5 months. How does it kind of compare with last year?
Yeah, I think I would make the argument, I think that this year is weirdly more difficult. Even though last year I was going back and forth all the time. At that point I was long distance with my girlfriend. She now lives like here in the US with me at this point, which is very good. But I was going back and forth between LA and Korea a lot last year, and that was on top of we worked all the international events, including lock-in. Lock-in was a brutal one, but we had we had some breaks like before and after these international events, to the point where it didn't feel so rushed. I remember I was like sick for like 2 weeks after lock-in because it was just like, I think me and Josh worked the whole thing, and we ended up working like the majority of the amount of days we worked for the global shows were packed into lock-in actually, because of how long that show was. So last year definitely was rough as well, don't get me wrong, but it felt more manageable, I guess, because of the breaks. And this time, I think the burnout dilemma that I was mentioning is being amplified by kind of the map pool and the meta being quite stagnant, I think, as well, because the middle of this season has been pretty rough in that regard. Like, I feel like a lot of the maps where you see a lot of creativity from teams got removed. Where Fracture and Haven, we just haven't seen them for most of the year, and instead we got Breeze and Icebox, which I think are very one-dimensional in terms of the way that they get played as maps, and I think that contributed quite a bit, because for me, the enjoyment of watching Valorant is seeing innovation from teams, seeing new ideas, seeing like the little tweaks and differences. And when you end up with maps that have really quite set defined metas, you don't get as much of the cool creativity. And yeah, for me, my personal enjoyment of watching Valorant, a lot of it comes from just watching good kind of like macro callers on maps. Like watching G2 is a treat because of the way Valen does his attack side calling. We just had the honor of casting them just then, and yeah, they're fantastic. But I think when most of the season was taken up by maps that arguably I think are very simple, you end up with teams just hitting 12 rounds in a row on Icebox or something, or Breeze just they're not really being able to work the map as much, and they made a lot of twists and changes in terms of that map as well, like with halls being closed off and opened up last minute. Yeah, it's been hard, and I think it's been amplified by that aspect ever so slightly. But we're in a better state right now as we're reaching the tail end, the apex, because we've just had a big meta shift, and we're seeing at least maps coming back in. Like Abyss has come back, or not come back, but it's a new map into the pool, which should spice things up. I do have concerns that it might just be another like Pearl B post plant type of beat. But it's early days yet, so you got to give it a bit of time, I guess.
Yeah, listening to you talk about how stagnant it must be, trying to analyze the game during the year kind of reminds me of this one point and that you kind of brought up during the Platchat podcast about how you kind of like took a few days kind of just download as much VODs as you can and just watching them straight up back to back to back to back in preparation for an episode. I mean, given what you said about just how stagnant the game is, how frustrating must it be for you to just kind of make sense of it all while trying to just analyze the game and trying to talk about it in a way that kind of is different week by week.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I've kind of like taken a step back from Plat Chat as much in terms of just being on like the episode last week, just because I'm trying to walk the tightrope of basically burnout or involvement in the scene. Because what I don't want is to burn myself off the game, away from the game, and like delve into apathy, a sense of apathy following the game. I don't want that. I'm passionate about Valorant. I want to keep my passion. I don't want to get to the point where I'm just like sick and tired of working in it, because it is a dream job at the end of the day. But yeah, there's only so many more of those like VOD gooning sessions I could take of just because literally we would finish up Americas, we'd be recording, I'd be flying out, we'd be recording the next day. So on my travel day, I'm just downloading 8 hours of VODs from other regions and just trying to literally get up to speed with them. And at some point I was just like, this isn't healthy. And also I don't think it was producing a good show either on Plat Chat. So we've kind of made the active decision, at least while the season's going on, just to manage our time a little bit better and not make the demand to like cover every single region, which we weren't even doing anyway. It's literally impossible for us to cover China as well. But even at the best of times, we were struggling to cover 3. But yeah, that was definitely a difficult part of things. But yeah, I'm just managing it basically as we're just trying to basically land the plane heading into the end of the year for champs as well, and just making sure that I'm in a good mental place for that too, is the big one. I've also kind of lost grip of where the question started, so I can't. Yeah, I don't know. Enlighten me.
Yap City. That's what I want in these kinds of interviews. I like people yapping, but still, like, I mean, unfortunately, in my opinion, burnout has been very prevalent in esports. You know, I feel I kind of had my fair shares of it. You know, this year and even last year. Talking about yourself, I mean, if I might be wrong in my assumption, maybe you had prior bouts of burnout. If I'm wrong, forgive me. Is this the worst bout of burnout that you've had?
No, but because I'm managing it better this time. There are periods of time, for example, when I was working in the Overwatch League, where there's the worst thing, I think, for like a general sense of apathy in your workplace or getting a lack of fulfillment from your work, the worst thing to contribute to that, in my opinion, is not having a say in the product or the direction of it. And periods of the Overwatch League, I felt like I was, to try and change anything, it took a tremendous amount of effort on the talent's part to try and shift aspects of the broadcast. It's a lot easier in Americas working VCT. I think that's one of the things that I'll always praise working this show in VCT Americas, is that I feel like, for me personally, I have direct line for communication and feedback and improvements to the show, which leads to me getting a lot more fulfillment from it, which I think helps push back the burnout, helps push back the feeling of apathy of just trying to basically mail it in and get to the end of the line, no matter what. Definitely it was worse back then in the Overwatch League days because of those reasons that I already said. And there was a whole other multitude of reasons as well alongside it. I've spoken about them before on stream and other interviews, but just my mental health in the gutter, getting an ADHD diagnosis, not even realizing that I had ADHD for most of my adult life, which you can imagine kind of, at least for me, it was very eye-opening. I was very glad as well once I finally got an answer for kind of my approach to work and things, which has definitely helped me out massively getting into Valorant. But yeah, this time around, I know more, for one, of how to manage it, and I'm managing it well, which is basically just slowing down as much in terms of the VODs and the workload I set myself. Because broadcast work is something inherently you can put an infinite amount of time into. Like I could sit down, and when I was at Madrid, for example, very keen and eager to improve every single cast, I was spending like 3-4 hours minimum in the morning of every broadcast day prepping, watching teams VODs, watching my casts, watching other casts, and just trying to pull as much as possible from that and prepping for the show. You could spend an infinite amount of time like delving into the very, very tiniest of details if you wanted to with broadcast work. And it's also a job where you could spend no time and just show up on the day with no preparation. And there's really no one that's like from the production side that's going to be expecting like the 4-hour prep days from you. So I could just walk up and phone it in, but I'm not really comfortable with doing that. I've kind of set a certain expectation in terms of the amount of work I put in each day and the pride that I get from doing a good job on a cast, where I don't really want to drift back into that feeling of apathy that I had once in the Overwatch League ever again, to be honest. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, sticking a little bit into that, but more not just focusing on that subject. I remember there was this one picture posted on Twitter about how a few members of the old Overwatch League, yourself, Sideshow, Uber, somebody else, I don't know the name of, forgive me for not knowing, but still, just kind of just showing the fact that you guys have moved on to another stage, another game, just still being at it, still performing well, still working as best as you can. That said, focusing on yourself.
Yeah.
How do you kind of look at yourself nowadays, now that you've been able to cover VCT for a few years now? Because now we're entering into the 5th year, I believe, of the game's existence, compared to how it was back for yourself in Overwatch, and not just focusing on Burnout, but just more so just your line of work, your building of personality as a caster / analyst.
Yeah, it's been quite strange to look back at. One, thank you for saying that Valorant is 5 years old in terms of the esports. Now, I mean, I especially feel old, even though I'm not, but in esports age, I'm old at this point. But it's been quite nice. I felt like initially getting into VCT Americas with the whole setup for it, I had a realization, especially when we were in person with partnerships, was that me and Josh were some of the more veteran talent coming in, which was very different to when me and Josh entered the Overwatch League. When that was the case, in 2018, we were green as anything as broadcast talent, and we had to be shown the ropes by the veteran talent there. And so when we moved into VCT, it wasn't a conscious decision, but I definitely kind of reflected on it and felt like in most examples, I feel like me and Josh need to be leading by example in terms of what is expected from broadcast talent, in terms of how much you contribute to the show, how much you contribute in terms of like ideas, general improvements, and even just setting an example in terms of like the way, I don't know, I guess you're supposed to treat the work. Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't a conscious decision to be like that, but definitely it was weighing in the back of my mind that we were coming in and we were surrounded by a lot of people, and some of them older than us, a lot of them younger, and as our colleagues, and it's like they're actually quite new to this system, and they're probably feeling like how me and Josh felt when we were basically inserted into the Overwatch League back in the day. And so we've just been working on taking the learnings from that system of the Overwatch League, what we were taught, and any other learnings across the way and experience that we built up, and just brought it into the environment. And I'm genuinely very, very proud in terms of the environment that VCT Americas has for broadcast talent. I think we have a very, very good team where people are not afraid to provide feedback for each other. They don't take it in terms of a like egotistical way, which talent work attracts a lot of egotistical individuals. I'll be the first to tell you, the people who get into it like to listen to themselves speak. I'm included in that. So part of that is trying to separate the ego from the job and understand that no one's out to get you. And me and Josh, I've definitely been trying to lead by example in terms of that, and pushing for like essentially like colleague community feedback sessions that we run. Been running them a lot this year, just in terms of trying to assist people. You bring clips to a meeting, we review them, we talk over them, what went wrong, what was good about it, and general improvements, just to basically raise the quality of the whole show, because that's what it is about at the end of the day, is trying to make sure that the show is improving, and it's not an individual basis. It's not about any individual who's behind the mic. It's about the teams and the players and the show itself, and making sure that we're telling the right stories, and making sure that that's being met, which all circles back to the kind of taking the learnings from Al, trying to bring it into VCT. But yeah, I'm very happy with the kind of culture that's being cultivated here in Americas. I think it's pretty top notch at the moment. Yeah, and I'm glad that we. I mean, maybe it's egotistical to even say it, that we shaped part of it, but I think that we did, at least in terms of our attitudes and what we showed, just from the way that we've approached every match. We always approach every match openly talking in the green room about, like, what are the story points? What do we want to talk about? As an example of the little things that just trying to get people into the right mindset, that we're a show first and we're not trying to hide secrets from one another to appear better and get an edge in that regard.
Is it greater than the environment that you had in Overwatch League, this current state? Is it greater?
Towards the end, yes. Because at the beginning, it was a good environment, and granted, me and Josh weren't casters in early Overwatch. We were on the desk, but the desk environment was pretty good. I felt like we had good leadership in terms of, like, Puckett and Golden Boy as the kind of, like, veteran talent that were leading parts of the desk. And we were surrounded as well, just absolute stacked roster at the beginning of the Overwatch League. But as time went on, especially as we moved remote, the kind of camaraderie disappeared. I just think by nature of not seeing each other, and you're just basically going through the motions. And the early COVID years were very, very difficult for everybody as well. So that was almost like the real... It was the highest point at which I felt like the apathy and almost just the feeling of, like, just trying to get through it, basically. Like I said, because of a whole multitude of reasons that all added up, mental health, other reasons like that, and then moving to basically online broadcasts after getting the whiplash of experiencing, like, in-person events that got kind of, like, pulled out underneath us. But yeah, the environment that we got right now is pretty good. It's still not 100% there compared to the first year of the Overwatch League, because that was where we were all based in the same city. This is a lot of people flying in and out. So it kind of feels like we're almost just got, like, mercenary companies just coming in and out and taking our turns of it. So sometimes you just won't even see each other for weeks at a time. But in general, the vibe still feels really good, in my opinion, for what we've built. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing that I kind of now want to talk about is just, of course, your partner, Sideshow. I mean, at this point, when one talks about yourself, the other, you got to talk about Sideshow as well. I mean, just simple question first, sports. Does he match your freak?
He does match my freak, actually. On the cast, behind the mic, in the bed, everything. Yeah. No, he is the GOAT, I think, in esports. Personally, I think he was paving the way in terms of the amount of, like, work that one should put in, I think, into broadcast work. He definitely set that bar very, very high, and I couldn't really meet it ever for the longest time in the Overwatch League. But when we came into Valorant, I almost had this, like, again, an epiphany where it was like we didn't get reached out to by the Overwatch League after a certain amount of time. I'm very lucky to even be involved in Valorant as a job, as work. That was in 2022, and so I didn't want to squander the opportunity. So I just spent, from 2022 onwards, just trying to match that bar that Josh had set as my co-casting partner for the longest time, and try and get up to that level, which was helped out by an ADHD diagnosis, 100%, because that was part of the reason why I could never sit down, focus on VODs, and actually crack down. But yeah, he is the GOAT, I think, the esports GOAT. There's no one quite like him really in the scene in terms of the work that he puts in. And listen, it's never been consistent. We've had ups and downs in terms of the work that we've always put in throughout years. I mean, he had a very difficult year last year, and it led to me doing most of, like, preparation leading into games. Not that he ever slacked, but I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting. But he basically deadlifted me for most of the Overwatch League, so I think it's only fair that that's the case. And yeah, this year it's back to almost just that balance of the back and forth. But yeah, he is the GOAT. I cannot sing his praises enough. There's no one quite like him in esports, I think, that has a mind for what improvements a broadcast needs immediately after just watching a small segment, that can immediately articulate his opinions on what needs to be changed, to do it in a manner that doesn't offend people, which is also a difficult endeavor sometimes, especially in esports. We're all gamers, and part of that is an inability to talk to people and communicate properly. But he's all good at all those aspects and more, on top of just being a very, very good broadcaster and broadcast talent. So, yeah, I couldn't really ask for a better partner. I'll glaze the ever-loving sugar out of him.
High praise for your partner. It's hard to believe, given the fact that you guys have been able to just trash talk each other ad nauseum, be it like in public or maybe in private. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So you can talk a little bit more about that. But still, I talked to Uber back in DreamHack Dallas when he was covering the OWCS Dallas Major, and he mentioned a little bit about yourself and Sideshow, kind of comparing both of you guys from when you guys in the Overwatch League and right now in VCT, in terms of just building that identity, personality as a collective, not just as an individual. And he kind of said about how you guys were on the precipice of building that kind of personality that you guys have now shown in VCT. Back then in Overwatch League, you weren't able to do that in Overwatch League. Now you're able to do that in VCT, just being a very dynamic duo, being very present within the broadcast, and you kind of talking about how certain teams will go about this and that, and then that kind of garnering plenty of attention. Same goes for Sideshow. How do you kind of look at how you guys have been able to develop that that dynamic between yourself and Sideshow from Overwatch to now, and how you kind of look at the progression, especially looking at VCT from the time you guys started working in 2022 up until now?
Yeah, it's kind of, I imagine we gave Uber whiplash in terms of him coming back into Valorant with how we acted, because to be honest, my entire time in the Overwatch League, I'm not particularly proud of the kind of level and expectation that I set with my work ethic, my actions throughout it, because I was kind of incredibly young when I got introduced, first of all, into the Overwatch League system. I was 21, just turned 22. And at that point, frontal lobe hasn't even fully developed. And I definitely showed it because I was given quite a high salary living in Los Angeles. And at that point, I was just kind of let loose and, making the most of the time in Los Angeles. And since then, it's just kind of doing a lot less of that, of just going out and wasting money. And like I said, a lot more just caring for the craft of broadcasting and getting my own fulfillment from that, which there's a whole ideology that I've just kind of come to my own conclusion on, which is you can't rely on getting grand finals appearances like as a caster or working a particular show and using that as your benchmark for success. I think that's one. I understand why people do it as casters, of why people aim and make their goal to work a grand finals, to cast a grand finals, to work the biggest show of the year, because there's not obvious benchmarks of which to hit as talent. You're on your own in terms of self-improvement and development. But I know for a fact that big companies, the Overwatch League Riot, will often plan in advance who works the finals, who works these shows, and often it's not necessarily based on merit. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they can really like your work and invite you longer. That's kind of what happened to me and Josh at Reykjavik in 2022. We were only supposed to be at that event for the first half, and then they ended up extending us to work the tail end of it, which I was very grateful for. But I don't think it's a consistent measuring stick to say how well I'm doing in the scene. How many accolades do I have as a broadcast talent? I think that has to come from your own self-improvement, your own drive, and reflecting on your work and being I'm improving. I'm making improvements from where I was before, which that was a shift for me that's occurred over the last few years. Just a lot of self-reflecting, like I said, ADHD diagnosis, a bit of therapy thrown into the mix as well, and just trying to be happy with my work, not using other people as my kind of benchmark of whether or not I should be happy because I did this, because I did this. Because I know as well, esports is very fickle. It can end like this. There might be next year, who the hell knows? Like me and Josh might not end up working any big international events because of whatever reason. And it might not even be up to our impact or the amount of work we're putting in, I've seen very hard-working people get snubbed over and over again in esports. So I know not to take it for granted for one, but also not using it as my goal, my beacon that I'm just constantly trying to chase and achieve. I kind of went off the beaten track again with the question, but yeah.
It's all good. Simple question, this one. Are you happy with the work you've done so far?
Yeah, it's a simple one, but it's a hard one. I was the happiest I think I've ever been after a cast, after I did the Madrid finals. Not because I got the finals and because we got to do it, but because we had done 2 finals before that on an international stage. One was Copenhagen, which we were not thrown into. We knew we were going to be getting it. It was an honor to get it as well, to be honest. But me and Josh that was the first crowd event in VCT history. So we're working off the crowd for the first time. A lot of big learning moments, massive learning moments. In fact, the Sugetsu 4K will live rent-free in my head forever as not being ready to kind of build up to the winning moment. And lock-in, we were kind of thrown in last minute because unfortunately Pansy and Hyper, I can't remember what happened, but one of them or maybe both of them got sick. And so we had to step in last minute for that after we had just casted the lower finals and we were worn out, wiped from lock-in. And that was not a good cast from us. I mean, I've listened to it back tens of times and it wasn't good. There was a lot of learning moments from that. So when we finally got the chance to do another finals at Madrid, and all throughout Madrid as well, I was going hard in the paint, just in terms of the preparation, always making sure that I was improving every single cast, doesn't matter which game I got. Always wanted to make sure that if a player or team listened to it back, they would feel like they were done justice. That's always my goal with my casts. And the finals came around and I felt like we hit every single beat of it, including like the final round. I was so pleased after that. I was genuinely just elated. And after that, it felt like I'd kind of met a goal of mine in Valorant for the longest time, because like I said, for me personally, and I've listened to it back, I know people have their strong opinions about, the big moments, the Alpha Year spray down out towards the yellow box or whatever on Icebox. People have strong opinions about it and they say, they enjoyed the cast, but at the end of the day, it wasn't a cast that I was proud of. And that was the first time I had a finals cast that I was really proud of, which felt very, very good for me. Just after the longest time, just eventually working up to that. And now there's been a bit of a downswing, I think, in terms of just finding still that momentum to keep putting in the workload when the season's been so condensed and hard has been very, very difficult. I'll say it. Part of the reason that I didn't do Shanghai was because, one, it was in solidarity of Josh's decision, which he didn't feel comfortable doing it, and the other part of the reason was that I genuinely needed a break in the middle of the season, genuinely, because I was going to get burnt out. We ended up co-streaming anyway and traveling and flying, but that's besides the point because it's a lot easier. There's no expectations that you have to know 12 of the teams coming into the event inside and out by VOD reviewing. I mean, even after this, the playoffs themselves, we're going to be going to Champs soon. I've got like 5 days to prep for 16 teams, and luckily 4 of them are Americas teams, but the prep work that goes into events ahead of time is monstrous. It's genuinely monstrous. We're putting in like 12-hour VOD days if you're actually doing your job properly, which you should be if you're getting invited to these events. So yeah, I mean, am I happy with my work? I was at my happiest at the end of Madrid. Since then, it's been just, again, trying to manage my own mental health, basically. And I'm hoping that I've managed it enough to this point where I can at least go out with a bit of a bang towards Champs and give it my all again and go on with the same workload, the same kind of preparation that I did for Madrid, same rapid improvements. Hopefully, yeah, and hopefully I can we can come back and at some point speak again about it, and I can tell you, yeah, I was really happy after Champs. Hopefully.
So I'm gonna get another interview after Champions. We'll see about that in the future, though. I have a few more questions before I wrap it up. It's kind of out of curiosity, things that kind of been on my mind. Just kind of observing you for as long as I've been covering Valorant. I mean, it's very interesting to listen to you talk about the issues with Burnout, which I am grateful of. I thank you so much for opening up about that. Really appreciate that. But I mean, looking at your social media, Twitter, I mean, it's kind of wild in the sense that you kind of post some freaky shit, some wild stuff. I mean, it kind of led me to think, there's no way this guy has like the issues that, obviously you've been talking about. But still, like, How do you kind of like what makes you kind of unhinged on social media and just having to just do some freaky shit over there?
Have you heard of the dead internet theory?
No.
No. So it's just the understanding that eventually the internet is going to be a bunch of like AI chatbots that are responding to each other. I've given up on social media. It's pointless. Like Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, is a platform just down in the bin. Most open forms of social media on the internet these days are being flooded with AI bot networks. I'm going to sound like I'm going to put on a tinfoil hat, but I'm telling you right now, I've been following AI development for a long time as like a side passion project. And the leaps in terms of like technological developments and also the ease of access for other people to have access to AI technology it's never been better for that. It's been incredibly open ever since ChatGPT, and now they've got like obviously their paid models. But it's very easy for somebody to create a chatbot to post misinformation, to post advertisements, spam, whatever, flooding up social media feeds with whatever opinion that they want to flood in, which there was evidence of that on TikTok comments with the UK election that came around recently. There was a reform botnet that was going around, which is just them trying to push for the hard right-leaning party all the time. You see it all the time on Twitter. Ever since that Elon Musk sacked like 80% of the workforce, they don't have the same measures in place to stop bots. It's just a rampant problem that they are never going to tackle. And now that they are just shoving AI content down people's necks, what we're ending up now is just it's a world where I think social media just isn't valuable anymore. And so what I do is I get my funny TikToks and I post them on Twitter to stay relative and active, and I'd be a bit unhinged, but genuinely I've just given up with it. I don't really care for it that much because I think the internet is going the way of basically almost a good term for it that I heard described as almost like a walled garden community. Series of walled garden communities. You can get into them if you're really interested into a certain subsection of the internet, but they're just going to make it harder for it to just be open, for anyone to just jump in and start spamming with bots. You know, Discord communities popping up or whatever else like that, where you kind of have to have the interest in the first place, seek it out, enter it that way, compared to social media where algorithms are dictating everything that people are seeing. And most of it is being twisted and tailored and turned, and misinformation is so rampant these days, so rampant because of all the other stuff I was just talking about. I've given up on it. I've given up on social media. I think it's already incredibly evident to me, at least, that most social media platforms are unusable. You can specifically really tell, actually, if you look for comments on stuff in a niche subject that you are very interested in, you know a lot about, which, I mean, a weird anecdote for me, but I was just like really getting into old school RuneScape again recently and diving into like different subsections of that just to read about the community and seeing comments that match the same pattern in terms of speech patterns. And you can tell like all new accounts, bots being set up that have just regurgitated a bunch of information that they've just been fed, and they're answering questions to try and appear as real people. And there's a lack of authenticity these days, I think, with the internet, and it's going that way. But I don't think the internet will die. I just think social media is becoming more and more useless. Yeah.
And this way for you to give a long philosophical take on the state of social media, but I mean it gives me a sense of just how in depth your mind really is, Bren, and looking at that, comparing that to how kind of looked at how you kind of do about your social media, kind of gives me a little bit of I don't know what's the right word, but whiplash. Yeah. I think that's the right word of saying it. But still, really do appreciate you talking about that. That said, I got a few more questions. Like I'm gonna make it a quick fire. Mm-hmm. All right. Favorite moment that you've casted? I'm gonna be doing back and forth.
Favorite moment I casted? Probably the Madrid final round, I would say. Because like I already said, I was probably the most proud I've ever been of the moment. We hit all the notes. I hit the big storyline moments. I even managed to weave in the Caron narrative as well when he was left in like a 1v3 at the end. And man, that was just a home run finish. I was really, really proud of the way that ended. Second to that would probably be the Jorgamo ace, I think, that was recently. But genuinely, I lose all track of reality when I'm casting. Like if you told me to recall most moments, I wouldn't be able to tell you. For some reason, my brain doesn't record memories when I cast. It doesn't. I just try and lock in, do as best as I can there and then. I genuinely find it very difficult to recall moments sometimes from the cast. But yeah, I'd say those two.
All right. favorite agents, favorite roles?
It's changed a lot over time. I like playing Jet. I used to like Raze. I was like a Raze one trick because the movement was very fun to me. I like movement agents a lot where you can get tricky with it. I went through like an initiator arc at some point, just trying to learn initiator. I went through a controller arc when I was like trying to grind to Immortal and ended up getting it. And then, I just go through waves basically. I just enjoy playing the game, to be honest. The Valorant is its most fun when you have like a 5 structured team like Premier, in my opinion, over ranked and just one tricking agents. But yeah, I would say like Duelist I enjoy playing a lot, but genuinely, as long as I have a team that comms, I'll play anything and have fun with Valorant, because the agents aren't the main takeaway. It's the gunplay, right? As the primary reason that you arguably win rounds. It comes down to those aspects of the game, which, agents are important. But yeah, you can still have impact and have fun a lot, I feel like, whatever agent I play.
There's one thing do you feel you want to change within the game of Valorant. What would that one thing be?
One thing or many things? One thing? I would say, with all due respect, in case there's any map designers listening to this, and I did an interview with him on the desk the other day with one of them, Diego. It was a lovely chat, and I chewed his ear off. But I think Valorant needs to move away from very big maps unless they have 3 bomb sites. And the justification for that is, I think that it disincentivizes teams to work the map more in terms of like working mid lurks, trying to push people into 4 positions and approaches if they don't have like a pivot option for it to go wrong. For example, like Haven and Lotus are very big maps. They're very stretched far apart. But when you have 3 objectives, and Haven and Lotus, I don't know if this is intentional by them, but the way that they're designed feels very intentional, where you have the B site that seems very easy to jump on as attackers, but quite hard to hold in the post plant. And that feels intentional to me, and it gives you pivot options as the attackers. I really like that. But the bigger a map gets, and especially when you get down to 2 sites, what ends up happening is teams devolve, and the most efficient way to play it is a 4-1 default, where they just have 1 player watching for flanks, and they have 4 players working the other side. And maybe they do a mass rotation, but at that point, the other team already knows. I think it doesn't breed much creativity, and I also think that it pens in specific compositions with wall smokers. So if there was one thing I would change, it would be literally select all, drag all, the whole map of like Abyss, Breeze, Icebox, I know Breeze is out, Pearl, scale them down by like 10-20% to make them smaller, I think, so that you have more of that organic options to pivot as attackers, and it just makes the game more fun, I think.
You've been able to predict the presence of ISO with the Gulag, making the Gulag ultimate and having an agent that does that. Yep. What would be your one Nostradamus or Brandstradamus thing that you would like the game to happen?
I've already spoke about this on stream. One of the agents is going to be coming out soon. I don't know this. This is again a prediction, but it's going to be a werewolf firefighter from Italy. And one of his abilities is he brings out his hose, and this is not meant to be sexual in any way, but he brings out the hose, and it's kind of like an updraft mechanic, but also clears ground debuffs like mollies or anything else. You can use it to clear, but it also lifts you up in the air. So it's like you can use it on, like if you're trying to diffuse, but if you use it, you're up in the air, you're easy to be shot. You can also use it as a movement ability. It's just kind of like a 2-in-1, because people have been asking for a way to clear mollies, counterplay the mollies for the longest time, that post-plant play. So I thought about that. I also thought about his ult, where he just like turns into a werewolf and then all of his clothes go missing. And I think just the wider community, because the Valorant community just absolutely just horny posts all the fucking time, they would love it. I think they would eat this up. I genuinely think they would eat this up. I can already see it. He comes out of the ult, his shirt's off, he's shirtless, he's ripped, he's glistening, he's a firefighter. I think the people would love it. I think they need to get on this immediately, and I hope that it'll come out soon. Yeah, that's my prediction. Probably not what you're expecting.
In a way, I did. Knowing you, that said, one more final question. What was your reaction when England lost the Euro final to Spain?
I never had hope in the first place. It's always the same way with England and football. Always disappointment. I don't really hold a strong disregard for Gareth Southgate, the England manager. like most of the country does, to be honest. Like, that's the overwhelming opinion, is that he's kind of just he's like throwing away the chances. We've had some of the best runs we've ever had as like a squad, even back when I think England has always had quite stacked rosters, like throughout the last few decades, and we've never quite made it as far as we have recently. So I think we've done pretty well, but genuinely, it's baked into you if you cheer on England in football to just have an overwhelming inherent sense of despair with the team and expectations. I genuinely went into every single game from top 16 onwards thinking we're going to lose. This is the end, and if we were up a goal, so be it. Like, let's go, it's coming home. But the amount of times we had to get saved in the Euros, we did not look like the best team by any stretch, I think, at that tournament. Until the end, we made some improvements to the last two matches, but who the hell knows what the hell England's going to look like for the World Cup in 2026, because I think a lot of our players and Gareth Southgate's going to be retiring, so who the hell knows? Yeah.
Bonus question, will England ever win anything in your lifetime?
I don't think so. I think it's more likely that the water wars kick off from societal instability and global warming just remaining unchecked than England winning anything. But I could be wrong. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I hope the water wars don't happen and we're fighting for fresh water and we've lost all track of what makes society a thing. But it seems like we're heading down that path. We could get into geopolitics, but I don't think Riot would appreciate it, me talking about it in this room. But I'll leave it at that.
And I'll leave it at that as well. Bren, thank you so much for taking the time, making this happen during this interview. Really appreciate it. And of course, best of luck in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate it.